Hey guys, this is the Wiggle Man and welcome back to Wiggle's Miniature Workshop, where today we're going to be reviewing Villainy Ink from Grimdark Compendium and Zaxagoon Miniatures. These are enamel washes that have come from the team over at Grimdark Compendium, and the big selling point for me is the fact that a lot of these are colours that we're very familiar with Citadel shades already, acrylic shades that you may already be using. So, let's get on with the review. So to begin with, we have this Terminator Captain. It has been primed just with yellow. We're going to be using Sector Rust and Goon's Grime. We're going to be covering the top half of the model in Sector Rust and the bottom half of the model in Goon's Grime. This is an experiment to see kind of how well the two washes blend together. Now, if you're not familiar with enamel washes, it's a very simple process. You can use it as heavily as you want, you can use it as lightly as you want, you can push it through an airbrush, but once it's dry, you can reactivate the paint that you've put on, the enamel wash paint, using either mineral spirits or white spirits, and that's where the magic happens. So once the model's dried off a bit, we take a little cotton swab or a Q-tip if you live in the States, we dip it in a bit of mineral spirits, and we just start to roll that cotton swab over the model where we've applied the enamel wash, and we allow it to strip back and pick up anything that's off the raised highlighted surfaces. This leaves paint deposited in the recesses for us already, and it gives us quite a nice matte effect as well once it's all dried out. So once we're all dried out and we've done our first pass with the Q-tip and the cotton swab and the white spirits and the mineral spirits and all the terms and all that, we then take Moon Yellow from Vallejo Game Colour and spray it through the airbrush in a zenithal pattern from the top down to the bottom of the model. And so far, I'm actually really happy with how this is looking. We've got the depth that's created from the Goon's Grime wash. There's a nice kind of warm orange glow coming from the Sector Rust. I think that works quite well on the yellow. Probably not necessarily in that 50-50 distribution from top to bottom, but I think we're off to a good start. So let's put some edge highlights onto this model and see how it looks. So for the edge highlighting, we are simply using a bone white, and we are using that thinned down 2:1 with Vallejo Glaze Medium. And we're just going to go all around. We're not going to pick out every single edge highlight. This is just a test model to kind of get used to the enamel washes and see how they look, and see how it would look on a miniature that's been painted up to a standard. We're not going to fill in any of the details, however. We're just going for the base yellow colour of the armour because Imperial Fists are the best. So yeah, not a bad result so far. Now, because of the beauty of enamel washes and that it's a reductive technique, we're going to switch it up and start again. So, now over the existing model, so all the previous steps have still been put through. This is over the top of the previous washes as well. We are going to be using Ichor of the Damned. That is the Villainy Ink equivalent of Nuln Oil. We're just going to slop it hard, we're going to slop it fast, and we're going to slop it all over the bottle, putting it on as thick as we can and see how it looks once we strip it all back. So once again, we're taking our cotton bud with mineral spirits or white spirit. I'm not going to make my mind up on which way I'm going about saying this during this whole review process, and we're just dipping it in and soaking the model effectively. The way it works is that the mineral spirits have a very, very low surface tension, and they reactivate the paint at the same time. So what that means is that it helps the paint that is dry on the, say, flat surfaces, let's say on the shoulder, it helps that paint to roll down onto the recesses of your model, so it all naturally pools and gathers. So here's how we look once we're all dried out. This is kind of a really good base to work from, I think. If I'd have filled in the rest of the details, I think this would look a very, very good mini. So before I move on to the next little model experiment, there was one point of note that was a bit of a gripe towards me about this product. They come in 30 milliliter with dropper bottles, and the droppers are quite nice. They're good quality. They're kind of glass droppers. The issue being is that it seemed like in about half of the enamels that I'd received, there'd been some kind of residue gathering and hardening inside the dropper bottles. I managed to get it out of most of them, but I just could not get it out of my Ichor of the Damned, which I think is probably what I'm going to use the most. Now, you can work around this. You can just tip the bottle into a little kind of receptacle, like my little ramekins, and you can squeeze the top hard enough that it does eject the build up, but it does look rather disgusting, especially with the brown wash. But yeah, that was just a bit of a gripe I had with the product. One for them to keep in mind for the future, I would say. So up next, we've got this Ultramarine Captain in Gravis armor. This is a model that came from the, oh my god, Dark Imperium? Dark Imperium box set. I have had this model for years, and I stripped it recently as a bit of an experiment with paint stripper. I've never stripped a model before, and I ended up painting it up to practice a bit of non-metallic metal gold. Now that it's finished, we're going to slop it up. So this time we are using Dystopian Brown, and we're going to cover the whole model, and we're going to try and avoid the metallic areas because I like them nice and shiny. But yeah, we're going to cover the whole model with Dystopian Brown. So once again, with it all dried off, kind of my thoughts on the Dystopian Brown is that this didn't add, it still added a fair amount of depth onto the model, but this looks a lot more like kind of mud that's been caked in. It looks like he's been going through muddy terrain. It's got caught in the recesses and the crevices of his armour. But stripping back, you can kind of see that we've nearly got pretty much the original finish that we had on the model, less the recessed areas where all the mud would naturally gather. So for a mud effect, I think Dystopian Brown is actually a very, very good one. And I could think of several uses for this, for some upcoming projects that I've got going on the go at the moment. So now we're going to move into kind of territory on the larger models, what I prefer to paint. Busts, kind of Titan size miniatures, things like that. I've got this Orc bust that's been basically sat on my to-do list for a while now. I got up to the stage where we are at currently and couldn't quite figure out how to make the reds a bit more interesting, not without doing some very, very precise airbrush work where you can see on the shoulder it's not very precise. So we're going to start off using Goon's Grime, and we're going to go over the chest area, we're going to go over the leather straps, and we're going to go over kind of the fur around the collar of the model. So then we move on to the stripping step, once again with our cotton bud and our white spirits. We're dipping it in, and we're just going to go over everywhere where we've applied the Goon's Grime. Now, where it kind of hit me, where I thought, okay, this could work, is around the chest. So around the chest, it really, really brings out that initial vibrant red and allows me to selectively remove the wash. So I've got that kind of volumetric transition from bright red to a muddy red where there's more shade on the model. Not overly convinced with the straps, however, so I took Ecor of the Damned and I put that over all of the brown leather straps, just to help differentiate them a little bit more. And I also painted it over the piping as well, just to differentiate that. I do intend to go back and paint over the piping, but this was kind of a painting concept stage. Should I paint this piping brown? Should I paint it a different colour? Should I paint it black? So next up, we're going to be using Coelia Green. This one is a bit of a dark horse to me because I wasn't entirely sure at the time what I was going to be using it for. And then I remembered some very good advice from a friend of mine, friend of the channel, Maranka, and she always suggests to me that you want to move towards more of a blue hue when doing shadows for green skin. So the Coelia Green, it's kind of a dark turquoise effect, so it's a good mix of blue and green, and I figured the kind of shaded side of this orc's face was very much looking flat. So we then apply the Coelia Green via brush just into the recesses at the moment. I'm not going to go mad and slop it all over the face, and we are then going to try feathering it. So we're taking our white spirits onto a clean brush, and I cannot emphasize this enough. The next model that I'm going to show you, unfortunately, I can't really continue with that product because I didn't use a clean brush with the mineral spirits, and it caused some issues. And this wasn't due to the Villainy Inks. This is something I've had before with AK Interactive's enamel washes as well. But we are just using it around the edges of where we've applied the Coelia Green. And that helps to kind of give us the feathered effect. So it's a hard shadow right up on the cheek, and then it moves into a much, much softer shadow as it kind of splays out into the rest of the face. So now onto our final experiment. We're going to paint up this ghoul model. So we're going to start off, and we're very, very quickly going to go through painting the kind of general skin tones with an airbrush onto this black primed ghoul. So, pushing the Villainy inks through an airbrush, it was actually quite challenging, and I'm not sure whether this says so much to my ability to look after my airbrush, because it is well overdue a clean. But I was pushing this through my airbrush. This is the Coelia green that we're using currently. I was pushing it through at about 50 psi, and I had to feather it out of the airbrush. I had to feather the trigger to get it to even come out of the airbrush. So that says to me that the mix may be quite thick, or my airbrush needs a good clean. However, I did also push the Carrion Crimson and the Dystopian Brown through the airbrush, and they came through a little bit better. Again, it was still a bit of a struggle, but once more, that's going to need some further testing to see whether I just need to clean out my airbrush or not. But I used these three colours just to add a bit more interest onto a rather flat-looking skin that we'd laid down initially. So as we once again begin to strip back the enamel paints, I'm going to give you my final thoughts on the Villainy inks. And overall, I would say I'm very, very positive about it. I can see a multitude of uses for this in all of my projects, whether they're big or small, whether I want grimdark looking miniatures or if I want a subtle effect. For example, whilst I was stripping back the Villainy inks that I'd laid down on this ghoul here, I noticed that because of the nature of the mineral spirits, it really helped the washes to kind of go into the folds on the musculature of the ghoul, and it really kind of really added to the depth of the model. And yeah, I was really happy with the results. So if you're someone who's kind of new to the idea of using enamel washes on miniature painting, or whether it's to speed up the process or to go for a grimdark style, absolutely 100% as a first set, I think this would be a fantastic little buy. You get a good range of colours, that hopefully you're familiar with if you've been painting miniatures for a while. Even for those of you, so I've been using AK Interactive, I've been using streaking grime and rust streaks in pretty much every single model that you see on this channel. I feel like these will replace them. I've got a wider kind of variation of colours, and I'll be able to use them more flexibly in future upcoming projects. Again, whether it's for more subtle effects like we're seeing here with this ghoul. So in conclusion, Villainy inks, I think it's a good first shout. The bang for your buck, I think, is a very reasonable ask as well. It's 30ml bottle. The packaging is actually really nice. It's all kind of handcrafted, nice little boxes that they come in with, a very nice label design as well. And the actual bottles themselves as well. They've got very distinct designs representing the colour that you're picking from, so you can just look at them from a glance and go, oh, that's the colour I want. So yeah, I'd just like to say well done to the team at Grimdark Compendium. Again, definitely going to be a daily driver for me moving forwards on my miniature painting. And yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Have you tried this stuff? Are you looking to get this stuff? And yeah, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye for now. And keep your eyes open because the Bloodthirster video is coming soon. Bye.